All right, welcome everybody. You are about to meet a very special guest, Mr. Tony Oakworth. He's an absolute fun guy, and yeah.
I'm wearing my fun guy hat today, even so. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm going to ask you about that in just a minute. So,
All right.
this is an interview, a way to get to know Tony Oakworth, who's a herbalist, a mycologist, and an all-around great guy who is one of our special presenters at this year's Medicinal Mushroom Symposium 2023. Tony will be speaking on Tuesday, March 21st. He's second of the night, 8 p.m. And name of his talk, Dimensions of Healing, comparing and contrasting the micro and the macro dose.
That's right. So I'm going to take a macro dose and just try to work through a speech in front of a bunch of people. We'll see how that goes, right?
Right on. It's an online, live therapy session that we're going to have with Tony.
It would be, I think, it would be a live therapy because it's just things start coming out when you hit those high doses. Oh my goodness! Wow. I might forget that you're even in front of me.
Yeah, so Tony presented last year at the symposium. We also hosted him live in person when he was here in Calgary last autumn. That was a lot of fun. I'm actually going to post the link down below to that video if you are on our YouTube channel watching this interview. But if you're on Instagram, then go ahead, just switch right over. You can access. That was an incredible workshop. That was a fun time too.
It was a lot of fun for sure. I can't wait to come back. Actually, I love your little room that you've got there set up for teaching. It's wonderful.
Yeah, well, thank you. You're welcome anytime. I know, distance and family and all other kinds of obligations can be a challenge, but Tony's based out of the West Coast. So if you are in the Victoria area, you got to look him up. You got to connect with him. He's a regular teacher and contributor to Pacific Rim College. Plus, he has his own botanical medicine practice.
My practice right here. Welcome.
Yeah, right on. So the point of this interview is for you to get to know Tony. He's going to share some insights around fungi. We'll kind of learn a little bit about him and his history related to medicinal mushrooms and psychedelic mushrooms, and who knows where the conversation is going to go. But the idea is this is kind of the preamble, that conversation, get some of that out of the way, that when you present on Tuesday, the 21st, you can just dive right in, right? The way we've set up the symposium is that, each night, Monday to Friday, 2 presenters a night. We don't have time for little niceties. And, oh, Tony, tell us about yourself. It's like you've got, 45 minutes to an hour to share. We want to get right into it. You've got so much goods to share with us. You're a super knowledgeable, energetic presenter, and we don't want to waste a moment at that time. So maybe just kind of start off, just give us a little bit of insight into, who's Tony and what are you all about? Sure.
Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of places I could go, and I'll have to try to figure out which one is the right pathway. But let's go with a quicker and dirtier version until we get prompted further down into the rabbit hole. I started my herbal medicine journey about 15 years ago, but always raised with a little bit of that influence growing up. When I dove into herbal medicine, I found a really interesting area of medicine, of natural medicine, which was mushrooms. I love a good mystery, and mushrooms had a big question mark there. Like, what's going on? There's all these unfinished explorations. There's all this unfinished work. There's this area of research that humans have kind of gone, I'm a little bit nervous about that. So let's leave that to the weirdos, like, the people that crawl around in the dirt and look at all these wonderful things. So I started becoming very interested in mushrooms. My introduction to psilocybin mushrooms came when I was really young, in high school, seeking understanding, coming from a bit of a traumatic childhood, and seeking other ways of kind of understanding and contextualizing my experience. Having grown up quickly and having to take care of myself, this was another one of those things I took on, I think, as a rite of passage, maybe, that is missing from our society. But that quickly led me to big realizations. I would say that this particular mushroom is what led me into a better version of myself and who I was to become, as there was a concurrent stream of alcohol use and cigarette use and things like that happening in my life. And thankfully, I think the psychedelics won the journey. So psilocybin mushrooms led me into functional mushrooms. That was kind of my talk last year, was discussing how these things can be a slippery slope into just getting yourself healthy in all the ways. So yeah, that's my relationship to this subject matter, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Culturally, we have that saying about cannabis that it's the gateway drug, and it's like, it's the gateway herb, right? Like it's the window in. It's like this path of like, whoa, like plant medicine can do that. Like it's similar with the psilocybin, right? It's like, whoa, mushrooms can do that. Like what else is going on with this kingdom?
Well, it's interesting that you bring up cannabis, because that was my other inroad, when cannabis was becoming a real topic for people. I piggybacked on that right away, and I said, there's other herbs, everybody. And actually, we can pair them with cannabis, and we can create an amplification effect for those herbs too. So yeah, all of these things, I think they're gateways into a healthier version of ourselves, rather than, well, we love blaming the one thing for the other thing, right? So fat was what sugar was doing, and pot was what alcohol was doing, or whatever. So yeah. So what are we blaming for psilocybin? I guess we're just afraid that we're going to go jump off a very tall building and try to fly or something like that. But right. Just a word of warning, folks, if you want to fly, take off from the ground. That's all you need to do, and maintain that safety.
Yeah, you got to earn that airtime. You can't just go to high heights and drop.
Yeah, you get high, you don't start high, right?
Yeah. Right on. Okay, well, so I'm already seeing a bit of a hint, possibly a thread of maybe what your conversation will be about. You mentioned with your own healing journey, right? Using psilocybin as a tool that really helped, emerge, take you from addictions with alcohol, with tobacco, maybe some kind of family trauma, some history there. And again, I'll just kind of rephrase the title of your talk, Dimensions of Healing. Comparing and contrasting the micro and the macro dose. And we know there's a lot of conversation around the power of psilocybin. So many people are now kind of tuning into the micro dose. And for sure, there's definitely people exploring the macro. But, this is one of its powers, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I was really interested. I stumbled on the microdose formula, by the way, early on in my herbal medicine practice, and I was elated to find that this was the exact recipe that people would end up following. But the various amounts, they have their strengths, I guess you could say. The macro dose, when everyone was talking about microdosing, it almost was, we were moving into that CBD conversation where people were kind of saying, oh, we can just use CBD and we throw out the rest of that cannabis plant. We don't want the high, we just want the healing, right? And what people failed to see is that maybe the healing is part of the high, or whatever, if you want to use that terminology. I think microdosing was set to kind of follow a similar pattern. Dennis McKenna, actually, at the last Spirit Plant Medicine Conference, mentioned, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because the macrodose experience is a transformative experience. It's on par with a near-death experience. It stands out 10 years later as one of the foremost experiences in your life, right? So life-changing, pattern-changing, behavior-changing, that's big stuff. We don't see that with the small amounts. We don't see these catalysts for profound change, but what we do get on the other end is a very subtle approach to the more subtle things that we're working on and dealing with, right? So it like a small bit of good psychotherapy, it's going to prompt you to start to dig into the little surface things. What is it immediately that's bothering me? Okay, I can look at that. There's some deeper aspects of that. Let's dig in a bit more into that, right? So it's the layers of the onion, and I spoke about that last time. Subtle access, but they all have their place. Sometimes it's better to lead into a big dose with these microdoses. Sometimes you need to start with a big, powerful one and follow up with a little bit of that too. So it all has its place. I think a range of doses are important for this work to address the various aspects of our healing.
Cool. And yeah, I assume, you know, when we get into your talk, you're going to be, you know, talking about, you know, setting and amount and that kind of thing. So, you know, typically when people talk about microdosing, they're typically like a tenth of a gram, you know, something like that, if I'm correct. What is your kind of perspective on what would be a macrodose, or does that depend? Is it, like you said, that there can be all these kind of varying stages?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question. I think this all falls into the realm of the experiencer themselves, right? So I think those that have the experience, they've tried this a number of times, you can find your base level, I think, at that, like around a gram seems to be a turning point for some people. Before a gram is like, we're kind of on a scale to micro, and above a gram, we're on a scale to macro. And there's a transition, of course, right? There's a gradient to that. But I would say for me, depending on the mushroom, a standard golden teacher type Psilocybin cubensis, sitting at around 2 to 3 grams is the beginning of that bigger dose experience. 3.5, you're kind of locked in now. And then I'd say between that and 5, we're moving into what we would call hero dosing, maybe. And then from 5 to 10 and up, yeah, you're a brave, intrepid explorer, and we congratulate you. You know, and you want help, you want sitters, you want safety protocols to be put in. So yeah, there's a range of those, and again, it's sort of based on experience, right? If you're really new to it, I would say, you know, finding that sweet spot of like comfortable discomfort, and then pushing past that, of course, in fairly substantial chunks if you're trying to go to that higher experience and breakthrough experience, we call it, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, is there really any difference between 7 and 10? You know what I mean?
Apparently, yes. So what I've heard, so my highest dose was 7.5. That's where I've been. But I think the curve is rather exponential, or can be. Here's the truth of it, though, Malcolm, and we'll get into this a little bit. No matter the dosage, we always sort of get what the mushrooms want to give us and what we need, maybe even. And so I can tell you that I had a 3.5 gram dose that drove a lot deeper than my 7.5 gram dose only a few weeks after.
Yeah, no, for sure. That actually, even before you said that phrase was coming to my mind. You know, you get exactly what you need, right? And dose doesn't really matter in that regard. It's more about intention. It's more about, being in connection and communion there.
Yeah, that's the wisdom of the organism itself, right? And I think humans, we like to have some sort of idea that we have agency over every little thing that we do. But rather than understand that we're part of a process, just like everything around us, the boulder rolling down the hill becoming the grain of sand, the wind blowing the tree and knocking the branches down. These are processes, right? We're the only thing in this whole game of life that seems to remove itself from the process and go, I'm not a process, right? But I think these things can help us get to that understanding. Mushrooms can bring us closer to figuring out what is our human process, what are we here to contribute, and in a way that puts us into the flow of life, I suppose.
Yeah, cool, man. Okay, just hearing you talk, I'm so stoked. Less than 2 weeks away for the Mushroom Symposium, and your talk in particular. I'm super excited. I know you've got your notes. You kind of mapped it out. You want to give us a little snapshot of like how you're going to move through that talk and what you'll be sharing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to kind of look at identifying the needs, right? So starting off, like, where are we? Because that's where you have to start checking in with yourself. And what does that look like? We need to know what are the questions we need to be probing ourselves with, even to get to an understanding of where we want to start. So I'd like to touch on that a little bit. sort of where we've come from and where we're going. I think that trajectory is important to understand, unpacking some of those things. Maybe changing our worldview a little bit. I'm a bit of a paradigm shifter. That's what I like to do. I like to come in and pull the carpet out from underneath people and make sure that they feel completely destabilized before I give them a new paradigm to follow. But I do want to kind of touch on that because I think a very ingrained materialist worldview versus a consciousness first or mind first worldview affects our ability to even work in these realms. So I'm going to touch a little bit on that, how we can do this kind of stuff safely, applying our strategic thinking to what are the long-term and short-term goals of our practice. This is a practice much like anything else, right? A yoga practice or whatever. When do I do it? Where do I do it? What do I do? And what are the subtleties of these experiences? What are we looking to do? And then speak to the strengths and weaknesses of those things, touching in on the macro again, same idea. What is a registered notable dose and how do we get to that place? What are the strengths and weaknesses? And you know, I can give you an example there. A weakness of any of these things would be relying solely on that agent to improve your life, right? So I've got a big problem. I go take a handful of mushrooms. Why am I not better now, right? So I'd like to get into a little bit of that and talk a little bit about that stuff as well. Managing expectations, I guess, engaging in that process and what that looks like, some of the tips and tricks that we can use while we're there. And then just making sure the message is heard and that we can be aware of the types of ways that information can come in and not to disregard those little hints that we are healing, because it's not always incredibly obvious to us, right? So yeah,
cool. Right on. Okay, well,
and we're gonna sorry, one more thing. We will contrast a little bit of science with this, so I do want to go into the literature and bounce back and forth, because what I do is I speak to my experience and the experience of my patients and the people I work with, but I like to kind of bounce back and give you a little bit of grounding there. So we will look a little bit at the science of what this stuff says to us too.
Okay, right on. Cool. Well, we're going to share a link and a discount code for people to register for the symposium. But before we do that, one last question. Tell us about your hat.
Well, I'm glad you asked. This is a long time coming, this hat. I first saw it on Robert Rogers, and Robert Rogers came and he did his talk about a delaminated amadou conch that's pounded into a fabric by ladies in Transylvania. And this is a proprietary, there he is, right there. That's the mushroom. Cool. So boiling that mushroom that Malcolm has, pounding it down, and there's a special proprietary, I think. I mean,
it's traditional. It's like a folk wisdom that these people in just this particular part of the world have.
Yeah, and it seems to be unique to that little group of people. And so my brother-in-law got me this for Christmas, and it was probably the one thing I cared about, and everything else went like this. Because I think this is officially like you're part of the gang now. You're in the group. It's mushroom cred, I think is what I call it. My mushroom cred on my head.
Yeah, so, for sure. Yeah. Whereas rappers and gangsters may wear gold and chains. We've got all the mushroom bling. So
that's it.
Am I part of the crew now, you think?
We can let that pass, I think, Malcolm. That's pretty good. But yeah, I guess if you're rolling with me, through the town when we're kicking it on a Friday night, that might not add up. So let's get you kitted up with the right kind of hat.
Right on. Cool. Okay. Well, hope folks, you guys are inspired to continue to connect with Tony. So down below, I'm going to post a previous workshop he did totally for free. It's called Friends with Benefits. It's all about microdosing and the supportive herbs that can go with that. This man is like so much knowledge, and that's just there's a little taste for you, right? Of Tony and his style and his knowledge and his wisdom. And the Real Meal Deal tickets coming up Tuesday, the 21st, as a part of the 2023 Medicinal Mushroom Symposium. It's going to be 5 nights, 10 presenters. Plus, we have 2 special free bonus events leading up to that. So if you want to register, go to lightseller.ca, and then Tony's got a discount code for you, TO20, and that'll get $20 off the registration. Early bird is until March 15th. So definitely you got to take advantage of that. And
Definitely.
thanks. Yeah, thanks for being part of this call and having a chat with us, Tony. Any kind of like final parting words you want to leave us with?
The fungus is among us. Let's pay attention, and let's listen to what nature has been quietly whispering to our deaf ears. I look forward to hanging with all of you and doing more of this. Malcolm, thank you so much for this and for putting this on as well. It's such a cool thing that you guys do every year, and you're such a great leader in education on this type of stuff. So thank you again for inviting me to be a part of it.
All right, right on. Well, Tony Oakworth will post all your kind of links and how people can connect with you, social media, your website, all that good stuff down below as well. So thanks again, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thank you. Ciao.